traditional networking, often people say it feels really icky and manipulative. The research actually shows you only need 4 to 5 critical people that can help you reach a goal. I often teach what I call the 3 golden questions. Number 1 is, if you use that sequence, then you start almost crowd surfing through people's networks.
A contact list is not a network. A contact list is a list of names, not necessarily people that you have the right equity with to ask or who can help you.
Let's zoom through. Welcome to the Experience Exchange, the podcast for people who've spent decades building careers and are now asking, what's next? I'm Pippa Woodhead. In this series, we're having honest conversations about second acts, what it takes to reinvent yourself, how to rebuild credibility without the title, and why your experience still matters even when everything feels different. Let's get started. When you leave a senior corporate role, one of the biggest shocks is realising your network doesn't translate the way you think it will. Today on the Experience Exchange, we're talking about networking in your second act. I'm joined by Judy Robinett, a former CEO, author of How to Be a Power Connector, which was named the #1 top 10 business books by Inc.com the year it was published, and a renowned networking expert featured in Forbes, Huffington Post, and more. I'm also joined by Felicia Heng, who successfully transitioned from senior banking roles at JPMorgan and Standard Chartered to building Wise Purpose, a specialist succession advisory practice for multi-generational families and family offices. We're going to explore what actually works when you're tapping into and building your network in your second act. So, Felicia, my first question is for you. When you built Wise Purpose, it's a company where you really rely on trust and relationships. You were suddenly doing this without your JPMorgan job title. How did you find this in terms of your network? Any insights you can share?
Huge changes, actually. I always had an inkling that there was a difference between relationships built based on a role versus relationships built on who you were. And outside, it looks almost identical, but inside, when the role changes, it's actually pretty obvious. So that was the first thing that actually kind of struck me, that without the title, people had a lot of difficulty placing you immediately within 3 seconds. Without the institutional pedigree of a big name, people kind of found it hard to place you in the pecking order, and they had to revise you in their whole mental model and scheme of things. What I found really helpful was getting into spaces where my future clients were going to be instead of where former colleagues or older relationships were placed. So getting into the right rooms with decision makers, with family offices, joining insightful conversations about family office governance, succession issues. Not so much to pitch, but really to listen, to be curious, to share insights, say, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm observing, here are the gaps, this is what I'm building. That was really helpful. Also trying to be very forthright in what I was doing instead of being the perfect polished version of who I was. All of that, I think, helped people stack up a view around what was genuine, what was real, what was credible, instead of, having this idea of a fake person coming into this space.
Well, that sounds like a really good mindset to have. Judy, we keep hearing this from our audience, that their network isn't seamlessly moving into whatever it is they're doing next after leaving corporate. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions that people often have about their network?
Well, one of the big misconceptions is that they think that, these people will be supportive and helpful for them as they move forward. But, once you're kind of kicked out of the corporate nest, sometimes you feel, and I don't know, Felicia, did you feel abandoned just a little bit?
Not so much abandoned, because I had made some adjacent moves when I was in corporate. So I kind of had an inkling things were going to change. But what I found most helpful was that the more peripheral links were actually incredibly useful in moving me forward. So strong links kind of are helpful in terms of sustenance, in terms of keeping you honest, giving you the feedback. But weak links are the ones that I found were most helpful in bringing me forward, because there was no vested interest in the old version of me. They introduced me the way I introduced myself. They were ready to update versions of me and what I was doing. They were genuinely curious. Whereas some of the older, longer relationships that I had a little bit of that challenge in updating who I was becoming. So that was a good process for me. I think both are needed, but they serve very different purposes.
Mm.
I was just going to say that the strong links are people who have known you for a long time. They're often very supportive, but they can't help you build that network out to who you're going to be and where you need to go. And the research shows that Felicia is 100% right. It is the weak links that can help us the most. But our influence is limited to a friend of a friend of a friend. And what I find is one of the problems people have is they just don't ask. And a lot of people are worried about asking, but the research shows you actually appear more competent when you ask. And the truth is, most people are happy to help you.
Mm. So, Felicia, when you're working with clients, or maybe even just when you've been observing friends and colleagues who are going through transitions, what are you noticing in terms of their network and how it helps and how it doesn't?
I think exactly to what the research and what Judy is saying, building this network of weak links strategically and thoughtfully really helps.
So, should we talk a bit about how to do that? Judy, lots of people are really uncomfortable networking, and it can feel like asking for favors. That's what people often say. Could you talk a bit about the research and how we should be thinking about this differently and then actioning on that?
Yeah, so traditional networking, often people say it feels really icky and manipulative, and it's more based on, transactions than it is a long-term relationship. But if you really think about who do you need to get to where you're going so that you're clear on what your vision, what your goal, and then where do those people hang out? And so if you can start identifying, the research actually shows you only need 4 to 5 critical people that can help you reach a goal. And so, really important to use the weak links, as Felicia's talking about, and start building those people out. I often teach what I call the 3 golden questions. Number 1 is, how can I help you? But then after you tell people about you and your project or your new job or your whatever, you ask, what other ideas do you have for me? And number 3, who else do you know I should talk to? And if you use that sequence, then you start almost crowd surfing through people's networks. And so you can very quickly move your network up and help you achieve your goal.
I know that you, Judy, you found that people are very generous about sharing contacts. I can think of times, certainly in my experience, where people have been very generous about sharing contacts, but I can also think of times where people have been very guarded about sharing their connections.
Yes, and you don't want those people in your network, honestly. You want people who are going to have your back and have your future. And so research shows that the first thing we look for is this person kind or caring, because we don't want a stranger that's going to kill us. Although most of those are your friends and your neighbors. But the second thing you look for is a level of competence, but I add generosity. Just because someone can help you doesn't mean they will. And about 5% of the population are considered the dark triad. These are the Machiavellian, sociopath, narcissistic people. And often you can pick up pretty quickly that you don't want them in your network. So really important that you think about, really trust your gut feelings here about this person. Is this someone who can really help you? And would they?
Yeah, I think I'd add that a contact list is not a network. A contact list is a list of names, not necessarily people that you have the right equity with to ask or who can help you. So being a little bit more thoughtful about it is a good thing. Although I must admit that I wasn't as strategic in the way Judy has described how one should ideally do it. It kind of felt organic. It felt iterative. It felt the situation called for me to be a continued work in progress before I launched myself. And in some paradoxical way, that kind of also endeared me to some of the right people, I think, because it was not fake. It was authentic. It was genuine. It was credible. and I wasn't trying to really sell in a salesy way.
Can you think of an example of a weak link who became a stronger link or became a really valuable person in your network?
Well, I think the experience exchange is a good example to be bringing up at this juncture. Michael, who's had an incredible time in corporate, he was someone with a weak link, who was a weak link on my list, and whom we found common ground to talk about, to collaborate, and to discover that we were very like-minded in what we were trying to do. And so the experience exchange, I think, is one of those rare platforms where a genuine person is trying to build a space for genuine transformational conversations for people who are making this pivot in their lives.
I'm so glad. Mike will be so thrilled that you feel that way. That's wonderful.
Oh, no, he didn't pay me to say any of this.
Okay, all right. So for Judy, for anyone who's been in a corporate role for 30 plus years, as so many of our audience are, what we hear is that people tend to have very fixed views on who they are, like former bosses, long-term colleagues. So when you are stepping out of a corporate role into a second act, you're trying to reinvent yourself, how do these close relationships help you? And can they also keep you a bit frozen in time? And talk to us about this.
Yeah, so, sometimes people feel a bit left out that you're leaving and you're going to go somewhere else. And they're not as, kind and helpful, but some people are very supportive and are happy to help you, certainly. I always tell people to be very careful about your assumptions. I mean, I'm 73 years old. I wrote my book, How to Be a Power Connector, just 11 years ago. If you would have asked me when I was your age, I would have said, no, I'm never going to do a book or give speeches around the world. And so we find that many of our assumptions hurt us and hold us back. And so I often ask people to talk to 3 or 4 of their close friends and colleagues and say, what are the best things about me? And they're often stunned to find out there's a pattern. For years, I thought I was shy. And when I started telling people I was shy, they laughed at me. And, it kind of hurt my feelings, but then I had to rethink that assumption.
So you don't think you were shy?
No. No, I found out, I didn't really like small talk, like gossiping and such. I was really interested in big ideas and solving problems, and I liked a challenge. And so in some environments, I didn't really fit in. Like I never liked the bar scene, stuff like that.
Yeah. What I found really interesting about reading your book is your background in the Christian faith. It got you used to a rejection, walking up to people, talking to them, and them sort of slamming the door in your face.
Well, and rejection hurts initially, but it just will help you go in the right direction. Because if that person rejects you, you don't want anything to do with them. And so, just putting yourself out there and realizing if they just say no, you just say next.
Well, that's a good attitude. So, Judy, can you share a story of someone who's repositioned their network strategically and done it really well?
Yes. So I had a good friend that was told instead of getting a promotion, she was going to start reporting to someone beneath her. And she was stunned. She had spent 12 years working nights, weekends, really saved the company hundreds of millions, was on important projects. And she was kind of terrified. She called me on the phone and said, what do I do? Thankfully, she hadn't been like a lot of people who haven't started reaching outside of their industry or the company that they work for. She had started some of those connections. And she reached out to them and asked them, indeed, what advice might you give me? Who else do you know that I should talk to? And she landed with a job that she loves, and she got 50% more in pay than she ever got at the old company. And, I always say when things are really bad, it usually opens the door to something that's much better.
Judy, so you did a lot of this research. You said it was 11 years ago this book came out. I mean, was LinkedIn a thing then? Maybe we should talk about the tech element of networking these days.
Oh, I mean, LinkedIn is just a phenomenal tool. There's over 1 billion people on LinkedIn now. And kind of the same with Twitter. I mean, really important. Like a lot of people will say to me, oh, if I just had that person's email, or if I just had that person's phone number. And there's programs that you can find that, but it would be better if you connected with them on LinkedIn, if you followed them a little bit and asked questions about what they're interested in. And pretty soon you have developed a relationship. You've developed some trust with them. And then you can form a stronger relationship and bring them into your network and ask for help.
I was going to do this later in the episode, but you've just reminded me, so I'm going to do it now. I wanted to get some quick fire insights from you based on things you mentioned in your book. The answers don't have to be that quick because I don't think it's possible to answer them that quickly. So Felicia, feel free to jump in if you think of anything to add. So how do you reach even the most unreachable people effectively?
Well, you can find out where they go. I mean, so I actually joined United Way because I needed to pick up finance skills, and I didn't realize the wealthiest people in town were also involved in that service organization. So you can do it through that. You can look them up and see who else they're connected to, find out, what they're interested in. I've had people that were able to connect to people at art museums and just found out what their hobbies and what they were doing. And other people were able to track them through companies that they worked for and other people that they knew in that company.
So, I mean, proximity plays a role in this, though. I mean, because Felicia and I, we're sitting here in Singapore, you're in the US. If a lot of people that I'm wanting to connect to are, say, in the UK or the US, how to do that most effectively sitting here in Singapore?
Well, just like you did, my dear. You reached out to me on LinkedIn.
Good point.
You reached out to me, and the world is very small now. And all the people on LinkedIn want to be connected with other people. And so you just realize, I mean, a lot of us worry about being rejected. But, when you hit 50, you find out nobody really cared about you. They were thinking about themselves.
There's this element of engineered proximity, which you can plan for and strategize. There's also that piece when you've engineered that proximity, you're face to face with that person, and how do you come across and what sort of internal clarity you have about who you are, which goes back to what I think Judy was saying. I mean, she seems very clear about who she is and who she's not, what she likes, who should be in her network, who shouldn't be in. And I think it's that kind of internal clarity that makes the network work, because you can't ask people to open doors for you or get you to places if you don't know which room you want to enter, if you don't know what you stand for, if you're not really clear about what you're trying to do.
That's a really good point. So we had a couple of other episodes in this series. One of them was about finding that messaging, really defining your proposition. So I guess that's a step to do before you're really trying to be strategic about your network.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of difficult if you've been defined by an institution for so long, if you've had decades of linear success in corporates, and then stepping out, having a new role, having a new title, being an unknown, all of that. There is a sudden pleasure in going incognito as well, because it's an opportunity to redefine yourself, to rebrand, to really see possibility. And that's, I think, the piece that is both scary and also the unspoken piece that people don't really work on. So the most successful people I've seen transition are actually both prepared to be a little bit an unfinished product before they kind of launch themselves, but also really ready to fail fast, fail forward. That kind of thing really goes against the grain of everything that I've been brought up to stand for. We've been trained to be resilient, to have grit, to persist, to persevere. Entrepreneurship taught me to actually fail fast, fail forward, to quit, to double down on what was working, and effectively live true to the saying that winners are quitters.
I love that. That's such a good answer. I knew these weren't going to work as quick fire questions. But anyway, because this is my quick fire insight question number 2, Judy. How do you get contact information for almost anyone in 30 seconds or less?
Well, you just use Claude or ChatGPT would be my quick answer. But there's services out there. There's Hunter.io, Apollo.io that you can just type in and they'll tell you emails immediately. But certainly with artificial intelligence, you can find people very quickly. But I recommend...
I've never tried that. Have you? Typing into Claude, find me someone's email address.
Oh, yes.
Does that work?
Yes.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
I mean, artificial intelligence has all the information in the world right now. It's just really amazing what you can do.
I thought I was becoming somewhat AI savvy. Clearly not. That's something I've been missing. That's amazing. Okay, so my quickfire insight number 3 question. For someone who's naturally a bit more shy and introverted, how do you recommend they overcome that and approach people with confidence?
Just pretend the person is going to be a best friend or that they are your best friend. And research again shows that if you're shy, you actually build stronger relationships faster.
Oh, really?
Because you're focusing on the other person.
That's interesting. You found that?
Yeah. But also 50% of us think we're shy when the reality is it's only 12%. And so often it's an issue of our self-esteem and self-confidence that kind of holds us back. And, we have so many gifts. And as you go through 5 years, 10 years of your life, you'll be really surprised about what shows up. Richard Branson said, if you missed the bus, don't worry, there's another one coming on the next corner.
Interesting. I think I'm quite shy. You're probably going to say, no, you're not. Okay.
Do people think you're shy?
Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I often feel very shy. If I walk into a networking event, I feel very shy, as so many people do. It feels uncomfortable for people, right?
Well, it is initially, unless you practice. So, I was so shy, I would go to meetings late and I would hang out at the food table and I'd leave early, because I was, nervous about being around people. And I thought, why would they want to talk to me? But I read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it starts out very simply. It's like Oprah says, you just say hello, shake their hand. I'm Judy. Glad to meet you. And usually once you get the cork out of the top of the bottle, you can't get the other person to quit talking.
Oh, good. What if the other person's really shy and they also say hello awkwardly? You shake hands and then crickets.
I've never had that.
Okay,
experience.
Well, good. I guess that's my worst fear coming out. Okay, I wanted to ask you both about networking mistakes. What do you see? What do you guys see most often?
The biggest one that I see with people is not using the network they already have. And again, research shows even in good times, we don't reach out very often to people who are already in our network or keep them educated on what projects, because they can't help you unless you keep them updated on where you're going and what you're doing.
Well, I've experienced a few, thinking that genuine connections that you formed while you were in your previous role was going to carry forward, when what I learned was actually it was the ecosystem and the context that actually kept those relationships alive. So there's quite a bit of difference again with relationships built on role and ecosystem that holds it versus the person that you're becoming and the person that you're transitioning and the work that you're transitioning into. All of that changes, and it's not about good or bad. It's about recognizing those differences and using them accordingly.
And that's powerful. I mean, that's really powerful, Felicia, to be able to recognize those and then use them. So that's good. And your strengths are often your weaknesses on the other end.
Yeah, very much so. And on the topic of shyness, it's been interesting because there are, of course, personality traits and differences that kind of shape that early influences as you grow up, what you're taught about being seen, not heard, or don't be the first person to speak, etc. I think entrepreneurship teaches you early that being seen as mundane, it's normal, and you should just get on with it.
Yeah, and middle class are often taught, at least in the culture in the United States, keep your head down, work hard, people will notice. Well, I found out when I was at a Fortune 50 company, nobody noticed. It was a fairy tale. And so at some point, you have to take responsibility for yourself and position yourself.
There's maybe a bit of a cultural element there as well. 'Cause I always find, Judy, Americans are raised to be much more outgoing and as you sort of referenced, the way things were framed to you growing up were...
Yeah. Well, I can only speak from my own experience. There may be some cultural element, some gender element associated with it, but there are also many instances when people have been brought up very differently and they've been told to actually speak out, and they have to recalibrate around what they're speaking and how to do it in different types of contexts. So it's really about being appropriate for context.
Can we give listeners a bit of an action plan? If someone is listening to this and they're still in their corporate role, but they're thinking ahead to a second act, like in a few years, I might transition to do something completely different. What can they be doing now to be really strategic about network?
So one of the things I would suggest is that you go to events that are outside your immediate industry. And in the United States, we have the Association of Corporate Growth that is CXO level people. There's private platforms like ExecuNet that has 1 million CXO level people. So you just need to get to events or groups that have people that you normally wouldn't associate with, so you can then have access. I mean, the whole thing really about networking is having access to resources that you don't have now.
Yeah, I'd say be intentional about where you want to get to and start getting to those places where the people are. I think internal clarity is also very important in terms of being clear what you want to stand for, not just your role, not your pitch, not your brand statement, but who you really are, because then you can get the network to open the right doors for you.
Judy, another question I'm thinking of for you is, you've touched on some of the research already. Is there anything else you can share that would be relevant to this audience about networks? What does the research say that people often don't know?
Well, I think one of the things that, I don't know the research says it, but I can tell you there's no lack of resources. There's 376 trillion in private wealth. Felicia knows this well. There's no lack of people, 8 billion people, lots of information, lots of ideas. But you do have to get a strong story, like Felicia says, have clarity in where you want to go, and then have that story, that new narrative, and then figure out which room to get into, where those people hang out that you want to go.
So do you need to really sort of nail the elevator pitch, you think? Like, hi, I'm Judy. Hi, I'm Felicia. Is that a key to successful networking?
The elevator pitch is an outcome of the clarity that you have,
Yes.
not the rehearsed, polished version of what you want people to know, because people can read very easily the incongruence if you don't really have that in you. That's my sense. And the people who have made the transition most successfully are the people who are very intentional about their second act. They're not seeing it as a season of winding down. They're seeing it as a season where they're taking everything that they've learned and experienced in their first act, or however many acts they've had before, and bringing that to bear in its full essence, its full distillation, and that makes it powerful. So it's not a wind down. It's a very intentional design around the best phase of their career. That's what I've seen.
So beautifully phrased. That's almost poetic. It was lovely.
I think it's what Judy has done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I really had trouble. I did my first book and it was how to be a power connector, but it was originally meant to teach people how to get funded. But, everybody's problem is somebody else's solution. So I had to do the second book on getting funded. And I thought, this is so different. I mean, talk about incongruent. I'm going from strategic networking to how to raise millions of dollars. But what I learned is you can't raise millions of dollars without a network. And so I was able to craft that story with, as Felicia says, clarity that really then helped me, whether it was an elevator pitch or just saying, hi, I'm Judy Robinett. I've written 2 best-selling business books. I'm working on a venture capital fund, and to string those things together that they made sense. A lot of people, I think, feel that they're not quite sure who they are anymore after they've left the corporate world, and trying to figure out, how do I explain this as my past, considering where I'm going? And you can do it. It takes some work, but you can do it.
Yeah, I think that's really beautifully put. I mean, making the trust architecture the real funding currency.
Okay. Do either of you have any final thoughts, final pieces of advice that you'd really like to leave people with?
I would like to tell people, not worry, to just put yourself out there and be you. As long as you're authentic, People love that. And people say to me, well, I don't have anything to offer anyone else, but you do. Everybody has gifts. And most of us want to connect with others. And one of the biggest gifts is just listening. But you can share articles, you can make an introduction, you can share an insight. And this is very important to other people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Well, I'll go back to some of the oldest spiritual traditions and spiritual texts, which says many, many times, and even in the Bible, it says at least 365 times, do not fear.
Beautiful. What a beautiful
Yes,
place
there's
to
very
end.
few things that can, I'll just tell you real quickly. You know, I did a franchise restaurant and I thought I was going bankrupt, and I went to an attorney and he said, you're not even close. And I said, but I'm broke. And he said, listen, they can break you, but they can't eat you. And it was the best piece of advice, because I found out very few things are going to kill you. I mean, what's going to kill you? And so kick fear to the curb.
Yeah, that just reminded me, Judy, about a really key point when people are making transitions. Very often there's some shame attached to having left somewhere big and institutional, and coming out on their own feels small, unprepared, lesser, right? And I think it's that shame that kind of holds people back a lot. It's a very big, complex feeling.
But on the other side of that is freedom.
Yes.
And freedom to create and have a vision for your life.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so, so much, both of you. This has been such a pleasure. So lovely to speak to both of you. And yeah, just thank you so much. Judy, you can go and
Thank
have
you.
a sundowner now and go and sit out.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have our second cup of coffee.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay. I'll get ready for bed. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Judy. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Experience Exchange. I'm Pippa Woodhead. If you're thinking about or starting a second act career, have a look at the other episodes in this series. They've been designed with you in mind. And if you're in Singapore, come visit the Experience Exchange on Ang Siang Road, where these conversations happen in person. See you next time.